so that I know I heard from a couple folks who weren't going to be able to be here today, but wanted to see this presentation. So we are going to go ahead and jump in and get started. What we've got on our agenda today, we're going to have our panelists all introduce themselves. We're going to do a quick poll. I have some planned questions to discuss with our panel, and then we'll end with questions and answers. So please go ahead and, as we go along, put your questions in the chat box, and we'll get to questions at the end. I want to call on my colleague, Mackenzie Fox, to give you a little introduction to the Kentucky Farm to School Network.
Thanks, Lori. So the Kentucky Farm to School Network is a group of organizations and individuals that are working to promote farm to school in the state. And we have kind of 4 core partners, but then many other partners that are involved. And so you see those images in the bottom left. So our kind of 4 key or core partners are Community Farm Alliance, Lori, Feeding Kentucky, the Hort Council, which is who I work for, and the KDA Farm to School program. And so you may have seen some of the work that we've been doing. We did a farm to school challenge this past year where we asked schools to do an activity from each area of farm to school, and then we awarded prizes randomly drawn to the schools that participated. We also, one of our big programs recently has been our school garden mini grants. So we were able to award 5 $5,000 mini grants to schools in the state to implement school gardens. And then just some kind of administrative things. We meet bi-monthly on Zoom to talk about things that are happening in the state. And we have a monthly e-newsletter that we send out. And in a minute here, I'll drop a link in the chat that you can sign up for the newsletter if you want to. Some upcoming things that we have going on. We have a taste testing mini grant that is going to go out later this summer for next year, and it'll provide funding to schools to do taste testing in the cafeteria or classroom. And then of course we have this webinar that we're working on. You can check out our Facebook page to see all sorts of great farm to school stuff that's been happening across the state, and also some of the things that we've been working on. And I'm sure Lori will send out the link afterwards to this recording, but there's lots of other farm to school recordings as well, including a fairly in-depth farm to school training that we did earlier this year, which maybe Lori can link in the email as well, our Bringing the Farm to School webinar series. So we are just a group of people that are working to promote farm to school, and hopefully will help it get to every school within the state. So thank you, Lori, for letting me do that little intro.
All right, thanks, Mackenzie. So our co-host for this webinar today is Community Farm Alliance, and that's who I work for. We're one of the founding members of the Kentucky Farm to School Network and do a lot of work to support small farms across the state and to develop food systems, local regional food systems, including Farmers Market Support Program, Kentucky Double Dollars. We do policy work, trying to make sure that farms are represented in both in Frankfort and at the national level. We have working groups who work on various issues within policy. We're founding members of the Farm to School Network. We have an initiative building equity in Kentucky agriculture with our Patchwork initiative. We host the Eastern Kentucky Farmer Conference and do lots of other trainings and webinars. So we hope you'll be acquainted with our work and support us where you can. So today we have 4 really great panelists with us. I'm just going to tell you who they are, and then I'm going to give each of them a little bit of time to introduce themselves and tell about their work. So we have today Tina Garland from the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. She's our state farm to school coordinator. We have David Neville from Capstone Farms and Cody Brenneman from Brenneman and Bucks Farms. So we've got 2 farmers in the room. And Scott Anderson from Madison County Schools. He's their food service director. And so we have a lot of expertise in the room about how to make local beef work in schools. And we will I'm going to go ahead and start with Tina and let Tina introduce herself and her work.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. And again, Lori, thank you for hosting today and bringing us all together. I am the branch manager for Farm to School. I've been with the Kentucky Department of Agriculture for 15 years this year, and the majority of my time since 2010 has been spent in Farm to School or with Farm to School. So we have seen Farm to School start and then just grow and morph into so many wonderful things, and it is constantly changing. And the beef projects and getting local beef into the schools and other proteins as well, but the beef project is just so exciting. And because it is, you know, we are the largest beef producers east of the Mississippi, and so a lot of our producers out there can provide local beef to our schools. And like Lori said, we have some excellent farmers on today with Cody. And just to a little shout out to Cody, this is a hamburger served at Franklin County High School with his beef. So that was this year, and it was, the kids really enjoyed it. You can see the smile on that young man's face. He was enjoying his hamburger. But however we can here at the Department of Agriculture, we do many different things and can help in many different ways. But however we can help, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And whether it's, you know, Farm to School, and then Junior Chef was kind of born out of Farm to School, as well as the Chefs in Schools program. And then we are waiting to hear in June for our USDA Farm to School grant. We've had several USDA Farm to School grants in the past, and that we've been able to pass along to our food service directors and to our producers. So we have a really exciting project for this year. So we're crossing our fingers and hoping that that will be approved. But again, I'm going to pass it back to Lori, and welcome, and have lots of questions ready because we're ready to answer. Thank you all.
All right, so I'm going to turn this over now to Cody Brenneman and ask him to introduce himself and tell you about his experience with Farm to School.
Yeah, my name's Cody Brenneman, and my wife and I own and operate Brenneman and Bucks Farm in Franklin County. That's where we live. I don't know if you can hear, the babies were quiet the whole time, and now they're starting to get a little cranked up in the background. But we retail and wholesale beef and pork, and then chicken when I have the energy. And we've been blessed this year in 2020, and some in 2021, some in 2022. We worked with a number of school systems selling beef, and we're hoping that we can push over into some pork too in the fall of this year. But yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Cody. So next up, we have another farmer, David Neville, who can tell us about his work and his experience with Farm to School. See, David?
Hey, Lori, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Yeah, my internet like as they say, I don't know if it's the internet connection or me, but it says it's unstable. So
well, David, your sound is kind of garbled.
So let me turn off my video and see if that helps. Does that help any?
Well, I can hear you better now. Oh. We may have lost David. So we're going to go ahead and let Scott talk for a minute, and we'll see if we get David back on here. So Scott Anderson from Madison County Schools.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson. I have 18 schools, 12,000 students, and I strongly support farm to school. And we've been buying beef for the last couple of years and really started more so this year. And look forward to answering any questions you may have on how we can get that into your school.
Thanks,
Hey,
Scott.
Lori, am I back?
Yeah, give us another try, David.
Okay, I'm going to try this, and if it doesn't work, I'll get off my laptop and get on my mobile device.
Okay.
And so David Neville with Capstone Farms and also Kentucky Dogs LLC. The farm is that sounds. We do beef and pork, both freezer beef and cuts. We also have a company we call Kentucky Dogs LLC, and we do there a healthier version of hot dogs for school lunch programs. We do some other products as well, some brats and sausages and stuff too. And over the years, past couple of 3 years, have worked with quite a few different schools, worked with Scott down in Madison County, worked with JCPS, and others, and always looking for opportunities. And so primarily we're in the protein business, but we're working with some schools now to take a look and see if we can provide, not just from my farm, but help other farmers provide fresh produce to school systems.
All right, thanks, David. Glad we got you got your audio working there. So we've met our panelists now, and what I'd like to do is I have a little poll for those of you who have joined us today, so that we can know who we're talking to and maybe tailor this conversation a little bit. So tell us what your role is in Farm to School, and you should be able to pick more than one answer if more than one of these applies to you, so we can know, all right, have we got farmers in the room? Have we got school staff? Looks like we got a couple parents here with us today. That's one of my roles in Farm to School. I've got kids in schools eating school lunches and breakfast. Got several farmers in the room. No extension people. I'm surprised. Okay, so I'm going to close this and go ahead and share this so you can see who we've got today. Mix of folks, but all folks who want to see Farm to School succeed. So thanks all for doing that. And we are going to go on to our, I have some questions planned out for our panelists. And so we're going to go through that first, and then we'll have more time for questions at the end from our audience. So I'm going to start out with this question is especially going to be for you, Scott, but Tina, you might have some things to say too. Why purchase or cook with local beef in schools?
All right, there's a number of reasons. One, with the supply shortages, it has less time to travel. You're going to get it at a great cost, and you're helping the local farmer. But better yet, the quality is better. You're going to get different cuts of meat and different things. You know what's in your meat. So sometimes when we get things delivered to us, we don't necessarily know what's in it. They sometimes add filler and other things in it as well that some of our students with allergies can't eat. And so there's quality is probably the best, and you want to provide the best you can for your students.
Do you have anything you want to add to that, Tina?
I think Scott said it all. It is the quality and overall healthier. Some of the fillers, when you, I know when beef started into the schools, some of the cooks were really struggled a little because it cooked differently. They were not used to cooking 100% real beef, because the majority of the beef product out there does have filler, like Scott was talking about. So just the quality and the healthiness of it is so much better. And again, it does help the community and the producers.
Great. So that's our school perspective. But now from the farmer perspective, so Cody and David, I'm going to look to you here. You could sell your beef in lots of places. Why sell your beef to schools?
Well, for me, my biggest reason are my kids are all involved in the schools. So that was the number one reason why we did it. And then two, the availability that we had of all the grind that we sell. It just made sense. They need large quantities and we had large quantities. So it didn't have to leave the county. I mean, it had to leave the county to be processed, but that was as far as it got. And it was able to come right back. So it just seemed like a no-brainer if we could work it out. So for me.
Not just for my farm, but typically school food service consumes more foods than almost any other entity in the county. So the opportunity, number one, number two, we could do value added products. And so we do our healthier hot dog, which contains our beef. And so it makes it easy for those schools that really are a heat and eat kind of deal, where they don't have the ability to cook or grill like Madison County, for instance. It makes it a heat and eat kind of product with our hot dogs. And then on the other side, if I can sell, 2 ribeyes to a local person, that's okay. But if I can sell a whole steer or multiple steers to one entity, it just makes my business a whole lot cleaner and smoother and easier to kind of do that business with. And, kids, if you can associate the product that kids are eating with a local farmer, not just me or not just Cody, but a local farmer, there's this whole new perspective that they get on where their food comes from.
Great. So schools are really familiar with how to order food from their distributors. People get a little bit nervous when they're doing something that's outside of their normal supply chain. So this question is for all of you. What are some of the things that people need to keep in mind as far as legal requirements or regulations that have to be satisfied? That can be both from the supply side and from the purchasing side on the schools.
Well, on the farmer side, the regulated USDA processed animal, that's one of the biggest challenges that we had. So when we first got started, we had to get somebody to break the ice and kind of figure out, weave through all this stuff. We have to have a USDA processed animal. You got to have insurance to carry. You got to have a chain of custody to transport it. So those are some of the things that a farmer has to think about whenever you're trying to get your animal back into that school. And the nice part is, once we did it once, it was easy. I was able to work with other schools and it was much smoother once we did it the first time.
And Cody's right on there. The same experience with us. When we first started, we didn't know the regulations, but knew that there were, and we needed to find those out. So I actually work with a processor that makes our hot dogs and other stuff that's USDA, and he's familiar with those regulations. So we've got to do USDA processing, but also meet the specs from the USDA school lunch program. And then we had some products first sold, and up pops this thing called the KDE product formulation statement for meat equivalency. And I'm like, dude, what is that? So I called my resource, right? I called Tina and said, Tina, help. And of course we were able to work through that. But the big thing is, I think you gotta, from the farmer's perspective, you gotta respect that schools are following the regulations, and you gotta meet those regulations, or you can't sell to them, right? And so you just gotta provide for what their needs are. And by doing that, you create all kinds of opportunities, right? And there's help out there. That's the other thing. A lot of farmers are like, well, I'm sitting here, I don't know what's the what. Well, there's help like Tina and others that can work with you to kind of figure that out.
And from
You know,
the side, if it's $20,000, you can do a small purchase and those type things. And for some of the smaller districts or even larger districts out there, I would come together and do an RFP or do a bid process. Doesn't have to be very detailed, but you can join together and do one and go out there and buy from local farmers. But if you're just starting off small, you can buy directly from them doing a small purchase.
and I'd like to follow up with, from our perspective, we kind of are on both sides. We are with the food service director, and then we are with the, producer. So we're encouraging from both sides, with that USDA inspection, you have to have that. And then the quality standards on the producer side, they have to have that quality standard with their animal and what they are going to use. Then, like Scott touched on, the procurement side, in the process right now, working with Anderson County, they want to put together a more in-depth, really specification sheet. So we are really digging in and putting that together. But like Scott said, also, we have our specification sheets out there that are a little bit more simpler too. And so we will have both available for people to use as examples and to be able to look at and to be able to use. Hopefully Anderson County is going to send this on up to Cerro and have Cerro look at this specification and maybe become a model, for farm to school across the nation. So that is, that's one thing that we're looking at as well. And then, like Cody had mentioned, your insurance, your product liability insurance, your chain of custody. We've also put a beef toolkit together, kind of, if you are interested, we can give you those 1, 2, 3 steps. And like David said, we worked through that product formulation statement. That was kind of hairy. That was the first one we worked through. And I think David and I both pulled our hair out. But also too, you can do a pilot project that if you are wanting to possibly get some beef in there or another protein in there, where I'm not saying that you're skipping that step of procurement, but it's a little bit easier. If I'm not correct, Scott, correct, or if I'm not right, correct me, please. But it makes it a little bit simpler if you wanted to put a pilot project together, for a beef, just to serve it one time. So there are some leniencies with procurement around pilot projects that we can look at. So that's all I have on my end.
Great. Do you want to explain any more about chain of custody and what that is and how it works, Tina?
Chain of custody is basically a form from when that product leaves the packing house all the way, what you're doing to handle that product. You're taking temperatures, you're documenting, when that product leaves one place to another place. So you have all that documentation, and Scott will agree, documentation is the key to any procurement, following that step. And it's also protection. It shows where you have done what you said you will do. And it helps with any type of, if you do have a food outbreak of some sort, then, it helps you follow, where that breakdown was.
Great. So what kind of planning is helpful to make this work? On the school side, the kitchen side, on the livestock side, what do people need to be planning for to be able to make beef in schools work?
All right. So one of the things I've learned is we buy an entire cow. We're going to save money that way. I can get my steak for the same price as the hamburger, and we're cutting out a few middlemen. So we buy the entire cow. So you're going to need to have space to store that cow. You're going to need to figure out, how am I going to cook the roast and how am I going to do the steaks and those type things. So planning on how to cook it, those type things. How much am I going to need? Because farmers only have so many tickets a month. And do I need different farmers? Can one farmer supply me with everything I need? So you're going to have to plan your menus and those type things. And then find your farmers. Once you figured out how we're going to cook it and how much I need, going out there and finding your farmers and procuring those.
I think from a farmer's perspective, I would say first setting expectations, even before you get to the plan, setting expectations as to what the schools need and matching up what you can provide. So, a lot of farmers are, and I understand this, I'm a farmer, say I grow this crop, I want to sell all my crop, period, boom, it's gone. Versus a school may say, okay, I need this many pounds of this product to meet my needs for this day, right? And so I think setting up expectations as to what the farmer can provide and what the school needs, you can develop then a plan. Okay, I'm going to need 500 pounds of beef. Is that going to be one steer? And then, what dates? And as Scott mentioned, the ticket, what he was talking about is a slot or a date for the harvest of that animal, right? Because you have all these animals and you don't have a harvest date, it doesn't count, right? And then the schools get probably a little frustrated saying, okay, I told you I was going to buy, come on. But you don't have those dates. So you got to factor all that, that timing and logistics and all that stuff in as well.
Did you have anything to add on that, Cody, about planning?
Well, I think for us, it was the communication with the schools, kind of predicting that future, and, we worked through the spring, we were able to kind of set, they would give us a range of weights, like we need X amount of pounds. And that would kind of give us an idea how many animals we need to process to meet that goal. So I think you got to be honest with them and with yourself too, because when you're packing around 2,200 pounds of ground beef or whatever, or carcasses or whatever, you got to be able to handle it properly and have those communication lines open about when it can be delivered, and things like that. So that kind of helped us. Everybody we worked with was awesome. I mean, I did not have one issue with any of the nutrition folks. They were all very easy to get a hold of, and would communicate, how much they needed, when they needed it by, and then if they had any issues, we had these open lines. So I think if farmers are going to do this, you got to be able to talk to people and communicate with the school staff, because they have things that they have to meet. They have time crunches and they're busy just like us too. So.
Tina, did you have anything to add on what planning is helpful?
Yes, go ahead and plan out those big events. You're going to have the end of school every year. You're going to have beginning of school every year. So, plan out those big events. Plan plan something for Farm to School Month. You know, beef and your proteins are really great to be able to plug in because you can hold them over. You know, they normally come frozen. You're able to, you know, keep them on hand. And so just, you know, plan your menus around some big events and demonstrations. You can also throw in some demo cook days or taste testings. And, you know, there again, if you want to try a new beef dish, you can have a little bit extra in the freezer on the side to do some taste testings. And so that way you're constantly doing new things with your food service and you're creating that environment of, I know a lot of the other food service directors always comment about Scott. You never know what he's going to have. You know, he always has so many neat things out there. So, you know, you can do the same thing. And beef is such a wonderful product to keep, you know, kind of on hand to do so.
Great. So next I want to talk about ordering and delivery. So what do the logistics look like and what should people know about how ordering and delivery works with local beef?
Well, I'll start with the school system. So again, it's talking to that farmer to know when are they going to butcher the cow and when are they going to be able to process it and bring it to us, letting them know when schools start and when they end so that they're not caught in the parent transportation portal type thing, letting your staff know how it's going to come. Is it going to be fresh meat? Is it going to be frozen already? Where do we need to store it? What type of containers and all of that? And so you're prepared for when that beef comes in. And if you've got a plan, how am I going to use it? Then, you know, once you get it in, you know how to store it. Now, looking at that chain of command, we always temp our trucks. So when that meat comes in, we're going to temp that meat. We know exactly what temperature it was when you brought it to us so that I can keep that chain of command going. I know what my freezers are. I know what I'm going to temp it at when I cook it. So that we've got that entire process of when I receive the beef or whatever I'm receiving from that farmer. I know what the process was from the time it left their vehicle to ours. And I strongly encourage the farmer to do the same.
Yeah, on our side, it's, you know, like Scott said, so we're scheduled out as far as these USDA processing dates. Well, then that animal goes in, it's, you know, it's hung, it's processed. Some processors will say 10 days, 12 days, but then they'll push it to 3 weeks. So you kind of have to prepare for all those things. So when you work with these schools and you know you have an event or they're expecting a certain amount, you kind of have to plan that all in. So you kind of know, and then you got to look at, is the day I'm delivering, is it 90 degrees or is it 10 degrees? And like, you got to plan for those types of things. The weather, and the beautiful part about it is, since we're all local, that meat does not spend a lot of time in transport. And that's the beautiful part. It goes straight from the processor to the school within, you know, for us, I think the longest was 90 minutes to Montgomery County. So, and that's actually a nice thing. But we're temping at the processor, and then we temp when we unload it. That's all recorded and given to the schools. They have a document of it. But I think the planning, and I think David will speak to this, is you got to know, you got to have those timeframes in mind when you're trying to meet these dates.
David or Tina, do you have anything to add on ordering and delivery?
Yeah, I think the planning issue, but also it kind of depends on what the product is, right? Is it a whole steer that's being processed at a facility, and that whole thing is going to go into one school, right? So that's one scenario. is it a system where a school system that has 6 schools that are getting ground beef already made into patties that's in storage? How is that going to be distributed and shipped? So those are some of the considerations. But also, I think we need to, and I'm speaking from the farmer's perspective here, but looking at how schools order and what their life is during the day, I think we need to get to the point where it's more convenient. Now, we haven't had any issues so far. I'm not saying that, but it needs to be more convenient for the school, for the food service directors to quote, punch the button. And the closer we can get to what they normally, how they normally order now, I think the closer will be for them to order more beef, not just from Cody and I, but from a lot of different.
So it's interesting. We've got the school perspective here and we've got the farmer perspective here, but the key player in between who we're missing today in this conversation is the butcher.
Mm.
So could you all talk about what the role of the butcher is and what the butcher needs to know or do in this situation to make this work?
I mean, for me, it's just, the thing Scott's talking about, we didn't really get into. We did more just ground beef. So for us, it was the packaging, is it vacuum sealed? Is it labeled? Are the boxes too heavy for the staff? So those are, you can't, we were trying to keep them under 40 pounds because, the staff can't be lugging around 100-pound boxes of beef all day. So those are things that we had to get right. The first time we did it, the processor put them in 10-pound boxes. So we had 1,600 pounds of ground in 10-pound boxes. So it was 160. It was fun. It was fun. So those are things you gotta move on the fly and fix but that's what I talked about, the communication. I do want to add what David was talking about. I think he's gone. There he is. But we had all of our schools took the shipment in one spot, but we had one school system that sent me to like 9 different places, which was fine because, like he said, I want to make it as easy as I can for the food service people, because if it's too hard for them, they're not going to do it. So if they wanted it to go to all those schools, they broke it down and we delivered each amount to each school. Each school got a chain of custody. So you're going to run into things like that. So you got to be able to adapt, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
And from the school system, we need to know what bone in and bone out means, and we need to know what the different cuts of meat are and how much you get average, and those are things that we can get from the butcher. We can also get it from the farmer, and we need to do a little research on why would we want bone in as opposed to bone out, and do we want to reverse that every other month or something like that?
This all falls back to that with procurement and your specification sheet, and with one of the quotes that or the specifications that we're working with Anderson County lays that all out. What the processing facilities, what's their role, what they're going to do. Is that cow under 30 months of age, or is it over 30 months of age? How are you going to remove the spinal column if it is, over a certain age? So all of that, again, can be taken care of with specifications. And one thing that I continue to hear over and over, which I agree with 100%, and I've heard it from every panelist here, is communication and flexibility. Those two are the most important, not only for the beef side of it, but anytime you are working with producers and food service directors, that communication and that flexibility is one of the most important. It is different, it is new, and each it's a new way of ordering, it's a new way of purchasing product, and each school system is not the same. So we've heard that today, as well as one product going, or all of the product going to one school versus product being split up and going to 9 schools. So each food service or each school will not be the same. So But your specifications, again, will really help you be able to identify what the producer needs, what the school needs, as well as what the processing facility needs to do.
All right, so we've already got a couple of really good questions in the chat. Those of you who have joined us today, whatever questions you have for our panelists, you can put them there, and we're gonna start tackling these questions. The first one really is for you, Scott, or maybe Tina. You might have some to say about this also. Many schools plan out their menus way in advance, or they have a rotating menu that comes repeats the same things. How can a food service director incorporate local products into their rotations or?
Okay, so yeah, my menus are being planned for next year. We're doing that right now. But we all use beef and we use vegetables and everything. So it doesn't matter whether we're looking at a protein or we're looking at a vegetable or a fruit. We just start small. So it might not be we replace all of our hamburger with fresh ground beef, but maybe we do a cow or two throughout the year, and we do small products. You know, maybe we buy 100 pounds of ground beef or something along that lines, and we just substitute it. Instead of the ground beef we get from Gordon Food Service, we substitute the fresh. And as we get better at doing that, as we make our own things from scratch, because USDA wants us to make things from scratch, as we're making our own taco meat or something like that, we're using fresh, or even part fresh and part from somewhere else. And same thing with vegetables. We start small. Maybe we order, 10 cases of tomatoes and we work our way up. So that's what I recommend. Madison County, I go big because I'm all in, but start small and start replacing what you have, because it's coming up. In 3 weeks, I'm going to have lasagna and we're going to have meat in that lasagna. I can order from the farmer and get it in.
Lots of schools also have their menus on their websites, and you can look at their menus and get an idea of what they're serving and see where there can be an easy swap. Like if there's ground beef and tacos, that's a place where it can make a 1-for-1 trade out. There's a second part on this question. What resources are available for approved recipes? Scott, maybe you could talk to that, and Tina also.
Sure. So USDA has lots of recipes there that you can use. As I retire, I'm going to be going out to other school systems, promoting farm to school, but we're also going to be helping directors with recipes. So I'll be posting recipes and things that directors can use to help with farm to school. So USDA has some. I'm sure Kentucky Department of Agriculture has some recipes out there as well. And contact other school systems, because we all have recipes we use, and most of them will be more than happy to share and let you have what we have.
In addition to that, we also have our junior chef recipes on our KDA site, and those are all approved. And there's a lot of beef recipes in those, and I believe that goes back all the way to 2013. So we have lots of recipes to scroll through.
In addition, today we have some beef recipes that we're going to share with you, those of you who are on the webinar today, from our own Chef Judy Gurney with the Chefs in Schools program. So she shared a few of her favorite beef recipes for schools that we'll be sending out to you all. And Chef Judy said she has millions of recipes. So if you're if you're looking for more ideas how to use a product if you say do a whole beef animal, and you know exactly what to do with the ground, but you might not know what to do with the roasts. You can check with Chef Judy for recipe ideas. Mackenzie has put in the chat an example beef specification sheet that's from the Kentucky Department of Ag website. Cody suggests there should be a list of farmers that schools can call if they need beef. What do you have to say to that, Tina?
I say that if you have extra beef, call me and we will place it. It would, I think that the list, no, seriously, if someone is wanting to get started, like Emily has the next question, how do we, the farmer, get started? If you are interested in getting started with a beef project, do contact me and we can have a conversation at what areas that you're wanting to deliver to. What areas do you want to work in? Are you just wanting to work within your county or surrounding counties, or 50 to 75 miles outside of your county? We can sit down and put a list of directors together. Then normally what I do is I put a email together and send to those directors and CC that person, just like we did with Cody and David. I'll CC them so that they are in on that communication. And then we get that conversation started. And then they sort of move from there. It is wonderful that we do have David and Cody, because they're experienced, and experienced directors like Scott and then Wendy Greenwell's on the webinar as well. They all have wonderful experience and can lend great insight to how to get started and work with. So, but no, honestly, also our Farm to School Hub is a great place to list your for kind of like that matchmaking, because the food service director lists what they are wanting to purchase, and then that farmer lists what they have to purchase, and so they can go and kind of do that match. And that's kyfarmtoschool.com. Mackenzie's put that in the chat. And it's a great place. It's new. We just kicked it off in January or December. I'm sorry, in December. And we've been trying to really put more producers on there. We've got quite a good list of food service directors that have registered. Now we just need to beef up the farmers on there to register. But that's a wonderful site. And again, just reaching out to the network, reaching out to KDA, reaching out to everyone is on the same page with Farm to School and helping. So we'll get you connected.
I'll make another plug here too for that training that we did earlier this year that Mackenzie mentioned. It's that training was all recorded, and those videos are available. Are they on the Hort Council website, YouTube channel, Mackenzie?
Yes. Yeah, that's where they're at.
Okay. And it's three sessions. So that training is the Bringing the Farm to School producer training. And it's really thorough and would be a great place to get started on knowing how to get started with Farm to School.
What I was trying to say, Tina, with that question, or I don't know if it was a question or a statement I was making, but I think Mackenzie wrote, if a school is looking for beef on short notice, could there be a list? Maybe there already is, and haven't gotten on it. But is there a list of where a school can go to find a farmer to connect? So, and then in the reverse of that, if like I had scheduled out to send X amount of pounds to a certain school and something happened, right? Their freezer space is limited and they can't take it. I don't want to give up those USDA spots because they're like gold.
Mm-mm.
So,
Yes.
so what if we process those animals and now I'm sitting with all this beef? Do I contact you to say, hey, I got 1,000 pounds. Can you find some place for it to go? I mean, is that possible? Or that's
Yes.
okay.
Most definitely. Most definitely that's possible. We've moved and Scott and I have worked well together over the years. We've moved hundreds and hundreds of pounds of product just on the fly like that,
Yeah.
where someone has had an overabundance or maybe another sale fell through or
Yeah.
but we have moved like that. And again, that farm to school hub is a great place to put to get registered on and to put product on.
Well, it just, I was lucky in the fact that when it happened, I was able to move it. But again,
Yes.
I don't, processors now are taking deposits on your slots because everybody, when COVID hit, everybody that had a cow in the backyard was going to kill it, right? And
Right.
so everybody, they booked all the processors type full. And then people like me who
Yes.
make a living, we were struggling finding these, the golden ticket. And now they're saying, okay, we take $100 regardless
Wow.
if you don't come or not. So,
Wow.
like, for instance, if I do Franklin County, we're talking 3 animals, 4 animals, that's $400 if they would cancel. I don't want to not have the animals processed because oh my goodness, Gentry's upset about that. But I just want to be able to find a place that we can say, hey, I got all this beef, where can I take it? And that's why I kind of asked that question on there. So
No,
it can work
absolutely.
both
We would
ways.
help. We would do all we could to help you place that product.
Because it's packaged, when we did it, it was in 5-pound rolls in 40-pound
Mhm.
boxes, right? Or, or
Mhm.
5-pound bags in 40-pound boxes. So
Mhm.
I can't essentially, I could retail it, I guess, but I would sit on a lot of it because, the average
Of the
customer doesn't
packaging.
want a 5-pound
Right.
bag of ground beef, so anyway, I just,
For our big, I
I
said for
do
our
because I
big
have
family,
80 kids,
no
but
brainer.
not everybody does.
Scott, do you want to add anything? We talked a little bit about where to find a, a school to sell to. How did you find farmers?
Well, I do a lot on Facebook. I talk to Tina, my local ag department here. There's a lot of connections out there. Talk to other directors. And if a farmer's out there and they've got product to move, talk to your local school. They may not be able to know each other, and they can contact and put an email out there saying, hey, who needs beef? Especially during this time, because it's we got a lot of inventory that doesn't show up on trucks. And so we're scrambling a lot to find that product that we need. So yeah, I was lucky enough that, of course, Madison County, we have a lot of beef producers here that I was able to just post something on Facebook and come up with a couple farmers, and then they put me in touch with more farmers.
So we have just a few minutes left. I want to see if anybody has final tips you want to leave our audience with today. What does it take to make local beef work in schools? Last tips.
I want to encourage the farmers and the food service directors out there and the parents. You said you had a few parents on here to push for quality. It's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. It's not necessarily the, going to be put fun in your schools, but I think the kids will like it. I think quality is so much better. And I challenge you to try it just a little bit. Your students deserve it. Your local farms deserve it because they're struggling. And I know when kids come through and they're seeing a hamburger and they're saying, hey, that's from my dad's farm, or my grandpa, because we put a sign up saying where we got that meat, and it's a lot of pride. So I encourage everybody out there to give it a try and talk to somebody who's done it before, because we'll help you.
I was just going to add while I'm, babysitting here. The there's going to be challenges. We still had challenges in we were pretty successful in the springtime, but we still ran into a lot of issues. But don't lose faith. Reach out to Tina. She's been great. Lori, been great. You can reach out to me or David. Scott, I've heard a lot about you. I haven't really got to talk to you a lot, but there's a nice, and reach out to your neighbors. I mean, you have farmer friends that, pull together and maybe do it together. I mean, that's one thing that we're trying to do. We're going to work out through this summer. I've talked to Tina, is we're going to kind of team up with a number of farmers to make sure that we can keep schools in beef, because I personally can't supply, a big system by myself, but a team of us can. And the beef might as well stay here. There's no point of shipping it to Nebraska to fatten it, to bring it back, to serve it to the kids. I mean, that's silliness. And we're not making the money, somebody else is. So we might as well make the money, and we might as well keep it here and feed it to our children. That's how I look at it.
And I would just reiterate maybe what I said a little earlier, that set expectations up front, right? And so everybody knows what's happening, and kind of, if you need flexibility, then you can kind of work that out. But set expectations up front is the first thing I'd say. The other is for farmers, if you want to do a little guerrilla marketing. So we had a system that was sort of interested in our hot dogs, right? And so I went and found a farmer in that county who finished beef. We used their trim. His daughter was an FFA president within the school, and all of a sudden the school is buying our hot dogs because we had an advocate within the school. So develop relationships, develop advocates within the school, and sometimes it's a food service director, but sometimes it's the FFA president. We've got a situation now where one county, we are working with our fifth graders. Our fifth graders are really talking to the superintendent and saying, we need local stuff in our school, local foods in our schools. So a fifth grader has more power than any of us adults, right? Especially if they kind of come together. And so while that sounds a little silly, that's a strategy we use, is have advocates within the school system.
So we're at the end of our hour today, but I wanted to invite you all again to keep up with the Farm to School Network. We have our Facebook page, we have our newsletter. You can email us to get on our newsletter, or join us for our network meetings. We meet every other month on second Tuesdays, and we'd love to have you join us. And if this webinar is helpful to you, we would love to hear from you how it was helpful. And I'll be sending out a link to the recording, Chef Judy's greatest hits of beef recipes for schools, and to come. And so you'll be hearing from us with those things. So I appreciate you all joining us today. And thanks again to our great bunch of panelists. Really appreciate you guys and what you're doing for local foods and for school kids in Kentucky.